Am I in the right class, yo? Oh, hey. How you doing? Yo, 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 people and patrons of the night. We are back at school, baby. Well, not technically, but this is back to school month. It is August. School is going to be starting up for a lot of the people out there that might be watching. A lot of kids are heading back to school. Maybe even their first weeks are going to start soon. My first week at school is going to be starting towards the end of August. So I treated this as back to school month, which means that on my YouTube channel, for the rest of this month, I'm going to be doing school-based kids horror. That's right. Kids horror media that's covered in school. I'm going to be doing reviews on that. So hopefully you guys get a fun little month dedicated towards back to school. And although school is not a fun thing, it can be tiresome, it can be boring, it can be annoying. Hopefully this content puts a smile on your face, and hopefully it'll help you guys out to get at least a little bit more happy as the school month starts to approach. So today, I am the Horrorlander, as you may or may not know, your number one favorite horror media coverer and hero. I cover all forms of horror media, whether it be TV shows, movies, books, short stories, comics, you name it. And today, for the beginning to the back to school arc on this channel, I'm going to be doing Goosebumps, The Perfect School. Now, this episode was an adaptation of a short story from the Tales to Give You Goosebumps series. This is a two-parter episode, and this is actually a rewatch for me. I saw this episode months back, and I never made a review for it because I'm a fraud, but today I'm finally going to be covering it. So let's talk a little bit about the plot without me giving too much away about the climax and ending, so that way you guys can watch it and enjoy for it yourself. And then I'll give my thoughts afterward as to what are some of the things I like and what are some of the things that I dislike, if any. So off rip, this is a very fun episode, so I can't wait to get into the plot of it. So this episode opens up with this dark and stormy night at this house. You got this little boy who's shivering and cowering under the covers of his blanket, and there is this ominous voice that comes through the ventilation system as he's home alone, which is extremely creepy, basically threatening him and reaching out to him like, "You're next, kid. I'm coming after you," which would make any kid want to shit their pants. That's scary for adults, let alone this little kid who's home alone, waiting for his parents to come back from date night at a restaurant. And you see the parents are on their way back. You hope that they might be able to make it in time before anything bad happens to this guy. And next thing you know, you see this gloved hand turn off the power in the house. All the lights go off. Obviously, the kid starts screaming. He realizes somebody's in there manipulating the house, trying to get to him. And right as the parents pull up in the driveway, this figure in a ski mask and all dark clothing breaks down the door to this little kid's room and then looks at him and goes, "You're next." And that's implied that this kid is going to be killed. He's going to be attacked or hurt by this guy. The kid starts screaming his head off. He's got terrible self-defense protection skills. His survival instincts is -5 because Blood picked up a bowling pin. He picked up a bowling pin toy to kind of use as a Fred Flintstone weapon. Either that or it was the mom's butt plug. I'm not sure. But either way, terrible for self-defense. Specifically in this regard, especially if it's the mom's toy. Either way, the kid is basically about to get clapped in more ways than one. Yo, the warrior is here. But next thing you know, the ski mask gets pulled off and turns out that it's actually the older brother, as you find out that this kid is the little sibling. And the main character of the story is this older brother who pulled this very sociopath, psychotic prank. And his name is Brian O'Connor. No, not the Brian O'Connor from the Fast and Furious franchise. Although there is a cool Asian kid in this story that reminded me of Han. So maybe this is like an unofficial origin story to Brian O'Connor. Listen, yo, Vin Diesel, hit up R.L. Stine. You know, you guys might be able to make a prequel series. And this story, as ridiculous as it is still more humble and rooted than a lot of the modern day Fast and Furious movies. Just saying. So So you find out that this kid pulled a prank, and the parents are obviously mad. I mean, this is going over the line. He really terrified the little brother. So Brian ends up getting sent to a boarding school called the Perfect School, which basically promises that it can turn any delinquent children into the perfect child for parents. Very obedient, well-mannered, polite. And obviously Brian scoffs at this as he's waiting for the bus, and he tries to tell his parents, yo, line up, get a sense of humor. Yeah, I traumatized my little brother by acting like a home burglar that was ready to, fuck him up and enter that booty hole. Listen, that's what he was trying to act like. But either way, just line up. It's just a joke. You don't have to take it so seriously. But the parents are taking it seriously because they are reasonable human beings. They understand that you try to act like a killer and scare our kid to death. So you got to go to boarding school. And because it teaches you how to be polite and obedient, this might be the perfect place for you to go. He enters on the bus reluctantly, and he sees this lively group of kids. You got this nerdy kid who pushes up his glasses and goes, zoinks, that kind of nerdy kid. And then you got this cool kid, this cool Asian kid that I said was like Han. His name is CJ. He's reading like a magazine with like robot on it. He's got shades on, and he looks towards the opening of the school bus and just goes, and then goes back to his magazine. So Brian sits next to him. And when the kids arrive at this boarding school called the Perfect School, it is strange because it's very militaristic. You got these like military security guard police officers who are like patrolling around the area. They got clipboards. They're taking notes of each of the kids like they're soldiers entering the army or experiments that they're keeping track of. When they get into the school, they meet this very stern and strict headmaster who's got that aura to him. He's got that typical principal headmaster aura that makes you nervous. You definitely know that he runs the place. And they got this like TSA security check where they're dropping off their watches. A kid takes out their retainer and puts it in there. So all your valuables are left to the school and you're left with the bare bones stuff. And there's this proper kid who I think is in actually the boarding school program that's like mopping up the floors as a janitor. And Brian, being a delinquent kid, basically starts poking fun at him, tells that he missed a spot, trying to mock him. And the kid ends up getting angry, shoves Brian. They're about to get into a fight. And then the headmaster comes in, he breaks up the squabble, and basically tells the janitor kid that you're breaking our program, so we're going to actually accelerate it for you. And he ends up getting taken away to an unknown place that kind of unnerves Brian as to how strict they are. And as the story continues, you find out that the school, they have to dress up proper, they're taught to behave properly, they're not allowed to talk unless spoken to, or when the appropriate time is there. They wear these very proper uniforms. At the lunch table, if you try to take other people's food that they don't want to eat, you're going to get whistled at and basically warned. And when they're taking this test is asking them all types of personal questions, like what's your favorite color? What nickname do your parents call you by? What's your earliest memory? So right away, CJ and Connor are basically like, yo, well, what is up with this school? Why are they asking us all these personal questions? And Brian notices that the kid that he got into a fight with, the kid that was mopping the floor, that the headmaster basically said his program's going to be accelerated, he hasn't shown up to the lunch table. He hasn't shown up to classes. They don't know where he's gone. And then he randomly appears while they're doing chores. And he basically apologizes to Brian in this very proper, very nice voice, similar to some other kids who've graduated that Brian and CJ have seen. Excuse me, where they act very proper and very polite to the parents. So they're weirded out. It feels like a cult. It feels like some weird shit. And it obviously raises some red flags. As I take a swig. And Brian decides, you know what? Fuck this place, I'm going to break out. So he decides, all right, let me break out of this school, and he tries sneaking off one night to get past the security fence. But it's rigged. Alarms go off. Then these huge spotlights start trailing around the courtyard. The headmaster sends out security guards and these soldier-like people to go search after whatever kid is trying to run away, saying that they cannot escape no matter what cost, which is a little bit ominous. It's a little bit too much, all right? It's a little bit too serious to deal with some kids, man. And Brian obviously is trying to escape the spotlights. He's trying to escape the security guards patrolling the area. He's slinking around in the shadows, trying to get back to his dorm room. He gets to the dorm room window, and you see inside the building that the headmaster is going with his head security guard, basically knocking on each door, trying to take account for each kid that's in their dorm and determine who's not in there. And the last kid is Brian O'Connor, seemingly, and he keeps knocking. Obviously, Brian's not answering, and he threatens Brian behind the door. Yo, if you don't open this door, we're going to have to enter inside, and if we find out you snuck out, you're going to be big trouble. And basically, Brian is climbing up these vines right outside his window, trying to get up there. And like the Chad, smart, on his feet kid he is, a professional, he basically ends up getting inside of his room, and he opens up the door last minute before the headmaster opens up the door, and he basically says, yo, I didn't want to answer the door while I'm in my pajamas. That's not very professional, is it? And I'm like, hey, yo, shout out to Brian O'Connor. He's slick. He got that smooth criminal energy. He was fast on his feet. He thunk well, and he cleared it up. So he's safe for right now. The headmaster goes away, grumbles, and goes, all right, he's accounted for. Keep looking. And then Brian starts to investigate. He tries to find out more about the school, see what's actually going on. And he finds out that there might be some experimenting going on in this school. He ends up potentially getting drugged and taken away by some scientists that might have experimented on him. He can't remember what happened. Might have got like roofied or something. And when he ends up investigating, he tries to break into the school system and find out some things. And he finds this laboratory with these giant glass incubation chambers in there. And what he sees inside of those chambers is horrific. It is nightmare fuel. It is scary as hell. Some of the most disturbing stuff you'll see in the Goosebumps TV show. And it lets you know that Brian is in a lot of trouble. And he has to find a way to escape. He has to find a way to save the kids. Otherwise, wallahi, they're all cooked. And that's essentially the plot of the story. And the ending is a clever decision made by a character. A little bit, it is clever because they make a decision that potentially might save their life. And there is some sequel bait. It hints that there could have been a sequel, which was never made, but it did give the potential of a sequel. Maybe the main character tries to do something later on. And that's essentially the story of The Perfect School 2-parter episode. So what are my thoughts about this episode? It is very fun. This is an extremely fun episode. All the actors do a good job. Brian's actor does a good job. He plays a charming kid. You can tell he's a professional delinquent, but he's got that likability to him with everything that he does and his dialogue. And when you get to the actual climax of the story, you do feel the intensity and you do want Brian to get out of there safe. The other side characters like CJ and the nerdy kid are pretty good too. The headmaster, again, has that aura. His actor does a great job playing a stern, militaristic role. The security guards do a good job playing over-the-top, militaristic security, taking detail of everything and being stern on the kids. And this story has a great atmosphere and a great setting. A boarding school is a great setting for kids' horror because it deals with isolation. You're away from your friends, your loved ones, your guardians. You're left to this setting filled with strangers, strange kids, strange adults, and if bad stuff is going on, you got no real way to contact the outside world. You have to figure out everything on your own, and you have to use your wits to get out of there. So you see that with the boarding school and The Perfect School. And it's very intense, the way that all the staff behaves. The courtyard scene where he's trying to avoid getting caught. Otherwise, some bad things might happen to him. Breaking into the laboratory, getting drugged, some experiments happening. That's all really creepy and disturbing. And when you find out the truth of what's happening at this boarding school, The Perfect School, and why it's called that, it is quite morbid, especially for kids' horror. So I thought that was all really good. And the ending, I thought, was very clever. It may or may not involve a decision that deals with the main character potentially doing something to save his own ass to get out of there. And it is sequel bait because it hints that maybe he might try to save the other people that are involved within this situation. And I'm going to leave it at that. So I specifically left out some stuff. I want you to watch it and experience it for yourself so that way you could understand sort of what the plot is going for and you can have a great time as well because I had a Another point I forgot to mention was the fact that this concept of Perfect School does feel like a Codename Kids Next Door story idea. So if you are a fan of Codename Kids Next Door, I think you'll be a fan of this because it does do that kind of thing where like it's kids versus adults. Adults are recontextualized as evil. There's these over-the-top crazy schemes going on. So if that appeals to you, I think you're really going to enjoy this. So overall, I would give The Perfect School episode a 9.2 out of 10. This is a great one. I definitely recommend you guys check it out. And if you're looking for some back-to-school horror media and ideas you want to check out, I think The Perfect School is a pretty good pick. And those are my thoughts on the two-parter episode. So if you enjoyed this, feel free. Hit the subscribe button down below, hit that like button, and hit the bell icon so that way you get notifications of all the future videos that I make, as well as the future back-to-school arc of horror media that I'm going to be covering. And stay tuned for more content to come. If you're going to be going back to school soon, just want to let you know, you got this. You could pull through. School's temporary. Trust me, nothing like the real world. You just kind of got to get through it and deal with the bullshit. So stay strong to all the people out there. If you're going to college like me, trust me, you got this. Make sure you practice time management and stuff. And especially check out some kids horror school media, because a lot of the time it can be pretty fun and pretty relatable. So stay tuned for the other stuff that I got up and coming, because yeah, it'll be great. I guess that's a school bell. I gotta go. See you till next class.